I am Dinah from Money Boss Mama, and in this video I am going to be giving you all of my best tips for how to increase your credit score super fast. So the first debt I ever got into was actually an auto loan, and I remember at the time I had no credit, and the only person who believed in me enough to co-sign for me, because I needed a co-signer, was my mom, and her credit was not the best. Needless to say, I got stuck with a really crappy interest rate, and the payments were $404.77. I still remember them to the cent, and at the time I was working as a car hop, so they were about the same amount as my paycheck. And then like a year or two down the line, I got bamboozled into doing a trade-in, and I was actually able to take my mom off as a co-signer, but my payments actually went up. I believe my interest rate actually went up to like a 9.6%, and my payments went up as well. And the car salesman, all I remember him saying is just, after a year you can refinance, don't worry about it, it's going to drop significantly. After a year you can refinance. I wish I had known that it was not going to be that easy to refinance, and you know this if your credit score is not the best or you have no credit. I got rejection after rejection after rejection. Having a good credit score is really beneficial because you will get the best interest rates. You will be able to have better options. So if you're searching for a home or a new car, you will be able to have the best options as well as bragging rights. So be sure to watch this video from start to finish. Get a notepad and a pencil because you will want to take notes. But before we get into tip number one, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's roll on. My first tip is to use credit cards responsibly. And credit cards, they do get a bad reputation because they often fall into the hands of irresponsible spenders, but they are one of the best ways to both build and increase your credit score really fast. And whenever I was first starting out, I got rejected for like every card. I even got rejected for the card at the bank that I was working at because I really didn't have any credit. So I recommend starting out with a credit card that has a low credit limit to reduce temptation, and to just start making small purchases just to get yourself into the swing of using it responsibly, and then pay it off as soon as possible. Some credit card companies allow you to make a payment that same day you made the transaction, and some will have you wait until the transaction actually posts. For the credit cards that I use now, I am able to make the transfer that same day, which helps me to not forget that I have a balance, so I won't get hit with any late fees or interest charges. For those of you who find it difficult to get a regular credit card, I recommend starting off with a secured credit card. And with a secured credit card, you are required to make a deposit, and the deposit is normally the same amount as your credit line. If you, for some reason, stop making your payments, they are going to use your deposit to make a payment on your balance. And so this is also a good incentive for you to continue making your payments because your deposit is on the line. Using a credit card responsibly versus going nuts and maxing it out shows that you are a good borrower, and good borrowers typically have good credit scores. When I first started building my credit, I started off using the Capital One Platinum card, and it was not because I particularly liked Capital One, it was because everyone else had rejected me. They started me off with a $350 credit limit, and I would use this to fill up my tank. And so every time I got paid, I would repay what I had borrowed. And doing this helped me to get into the motion of using my credit card regularly and responsibly. The next tip that I have is to track your credit score. And when you track your credit score, you are able to see the effects that your financial decisions actually have on the health of your score. It's so dark. Personally, I recommend getting in there and repairing or increasing your credit score yourself, because when you actually get in there and do the work, whatever you did to mess it up the first time, you are probably not going to do it again, versus whenever you hire someone to repair your credit yourself, you are skipping out on those much needed lessons. And so you're taking the easy route and you have this short fix. Then you go and you get the car, the house that you want, and you're probably going to screw it up again, and this time you're not going to know how to fix it. So getting in there and doing the work yourself allows you to have a good credit score for the long term, because you know what it takes to keep it in good shape. I like to use free credit monitoring sites such as Credit Sesame and Credit Karma. And with these sites, especially Credit Sesame, they allow you to see the different components of your score, and they also show you what debts are included in your score, any negative remarks or late payments, and give you helpful recommendations that you can use to increase your score on your own and keep your score in good shape. Now, I will say, whenever an actual lender pulls my credit score, it is a bit higher, which is a good thing, but for the most part they are still pretty accurate. So after a bit of time using my Capital One card, things were progressing, but just not as fast as I needed them to. So I did go back to the drawing board, researching ways in which I could increase my credit score even faster. And I learned that the more accounts that you have in good standing, the better. So I went through to see what the best credit card was, and since I had already proven that I was a good borrower by using my Capital One card responsibly, I decided on the Discover It card, and to my surprise, I was approved the first go around. I continued to use Capital One to pay for my gas, and I decided to use the Discover It card to pay for my food. And every time I got paid, I would of course pay back what I had borrowed. And since I was using two cards at once responsibly, it seems like my credit score was increasing at double the speed. And this was partly due to the fact that since now I had multiple credit cards, I had a larger credit limit, and this is the maximum amount that a lender has given you. This next tip really helped me to rack up the points, and that is to pay off your credit card balances before the closing date. Keeping your credit utilization to 30% or less is ideal for your credit score, but in my opinion, I feel like it's even better when it's at 0. And what this means is, even though you have credit available to you, you are paying back what you have owed in full every single month. When you go over that 30%, it could really have a negative impact on your credit score, because it is showing lenders that you are too reliant on your credit card, or you are very irresponsible with your credit card. And if you were lending something to someone and you see that someone is maxed out, would you really want to lend them money? And do you really feel like you're going to get that money back? No. A good tip is to look at your statements to find the billing period. Your statements will have a specific day of each month that will mark your statement cutoff date. And what you want to do is make sure that by that specific date, your balance is reflecting $0. Because shortly after this, the credit card companies are going to send it off to the credit bureaus, and you want to make sure that you can squeeze out as much points as you possibly can. If possible, try not to use your card for a few days after you get it to the $0, because last thing we want is for a recent transaction to be sent up to the credit bureaus when it really should have been at $0. This next tip is something that you should be doing anyway, which is to pay your bills on time. Payment history is actually the biggest component of your credit score, making up 35%. So obviously this is one of the most beneficial things that you can do, and this is because it shows lenders that you are reliable and you are more likely to pay back what you have borrowed. So think about it. If a friend comes to you and wants to borrow $50, but you know that this friend is never on time with repaying you, you are more likely to say no. You're not going to lend that person that $50 because you don't know when you'll get that $50 back, or if you'll ever get that $50 back. Another tip that I have is to pay down debt. Now, oddly enough, a lot of people that come to me are holding on to certain debt because they are afraid if they pay it off that their credit score is going to drop. Number one, unless you are looking to go into more debt, aka borrowing, this really doesn't matter. And number two, paying off my debt has actually helped me to increase my credit score. Now, I will say, yes, there are going to be times in which your credit score rises and falls, but as long as you are staying consistent with paying down your balances and using something like a credit card regularly and paying it off each month, your score will rise if you do lose a few points whenever you pay off a balance. Although on-time payments do hold more weight when it comes to your credit score, as you continue to pay down your balances, you will see a gradual increase because your credit utilization is improving. That wraps up all of my tips on how you can increase your credit score on your own super fast. I did do all these tips consistently for 1 year to see that big jump, but I still use all of these tips and I still see a gradual increase in my credit score. So if you like this video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you all in next week's video.